In this introductory project management video on project management functions, only two project management fundamental items are addressed, covered, and discussed. The first being the project management framework, and the second being the project management functions. The project management framework, as the name suggests, is the fundamental structure underlying project management. It is the first aspect of project management that a project manager should understand and appreciate. It provides the vantage point onto the project management practice. While on the other hand, the project management functions, together with the project management critical success factors, spring directly from the project management framework. Subsequent to understanding and appreciating the project management framework, project management functions are the next aspect of project management that a project manager should not only understand and appreciate, but more importantly, should inculcate and ingrain into their practice and then master as their second nature. This is an inaugural teaching video content from the Real Institute channel. This is an introduction to project management, and the theme of this brief presentation is project management functions. So you want to know what we project managers do. You want to know how we work and how we approach the management of projects. You want to know what skills do we possess, and perhaps you want to know what are the functions of a project manager. Then stay tuned as I take you through the paces of project management functions. Well, first things first, my name is Musa Mgemane. I am a knowledge practitioner at Real Institute. I'm a professional project manager, PMP for short, as certified by the internationally acclaimed Project Management Institute. I have been PMP since the year 2009, and I am PMP number 1239652. I hold a master's degree and a doctoral degree in business, being a doctor in business since the year 2013. I teach business and enterprise management at Real Institute. I also teach entrepreneurial development and project management at Real Institute. I am an adjunct visiting senior lecturer at the University of Pretoria, School of Health Systems and Public Health, situated at the Princehof campus, where I teach a project management elective module to the Masters in Public Health students. I have previously taught research to the master's students in engineering management and project management at the University of Pretoria Graduate School of Technology Management, situated at the Hatfield campus. I supervise MBA students' research at the Nelson Mandela University. I have a project management experience spanning over 30 years and a management consulting experience spanning over 20 years. I'm a published author of 7 books. And on a lighter note, I'm a member of the Green Number Club. I'm Green Number 48592. As I've already stated, that the subject matter of this brief presentation is the introduction to project management, and its theme is the project management functions. Well, whether we are talking about the introduction to project management or we are talking about the project management functions, bottom line is that we are talking about project management. Project management is a well-established discipline. There is a sizable scholarly literature and body of knowledge on project management out there in the academia, in the public domain, and in the professional space. Project management is also a well-established profession and practice. It is one of the fastest growing professions globally. However, at the center of project management is a project. It is therefore important in addressing the subject of project management functions to first address the connection between project management and projects. Because a project is the nexus of project management, it is important, therefore, to first explore the dependence of project management on projects. Because without a project, project management becomes irrelevant. Then the question begs, I guess, the question becomes, then what is a project? What is this thing that makes project management to be relevant and pertinent? Well, a project is basically a set of activities. Not just any set of activities, but activities that actualize a concept. A concept in the context of a project refers to an idea that could be a desire, that could be a goal, that could be a mandate, that could be an objective, that could be an obligation, that could be a requirement or a responsibility. A project then becomes a vehicle for actualizing a concept into an outcome of some sort. A project outcome that is actualized from a concept by a project could be a product, could be a service, could be an experience, or could be a result of some kind. Projects actualize ideas. To actualize is to make something real or to make something concrete. So projects actualize desires. Projects make goals real. Projects make mandates concrete. Projects transform abstract objectives into their concrete form. Yes, projects actualize obligations, responsibilities, and requirements into products, into services, into experiences, and into results of some kind. Then if projects fundamentally are about actualization, if projects are centrally and inherently about bringing something into existence, if they're about transforming concept into their realized outcomes, then project management is about their optimization. Then project management is about the optimization of projects. Because projects are essentially and centrally about the process or about the activities of bringing something into existence. They are about the activities of bringing project concepts into project outcomes. Project management, on the other hand, is about making the project effort effective and efficient. It is about ensuring that the project activities are performed in an effective manner and in an efficient manner, with zero wastage in time, and zero wastage in resources. Project activities without the optimization of project management have a tendency of being haphazard. Without project management, project activities tend to be without measure and without structure. Project management brings measure and structure to what would ordinarily be haphazard project activities. The project concept could also be referred to as the project objective or the project requirement. It is the objective of the project owners and it is the requirement of the project stakeholders. Therefore, in managing the set of activities of a project, all we are doing is to optimize the process from the project concept to the project outcome. Or in other words, all we are doing is to optimize the process from the project objective to the project deliverable that is expected by the project owner. Also, from a different perspective, we are optimizing the process from the project requirements to the product or to the service outcome or to the experience that is required by the project stakeholders. Remember that we as project managers we do not own the projects. Instead, we are stewards of the project effort and the project resources and the project outcome on behalf of the project stakeholders. We are agents of the project outcome delivery effort as entrusted on us by the project owners for that responsibility. I trust that this brief background puts us in an appropriate frame of mind to prepare us to understand and appreciate the functions of a project manager in managing projects. As already mentioned, that I am a teacher, a lecturer, and a facilitator. In my few years of teaching, in the past few years, I have taught or lectured in several disciplines. Well, a discipline is basically a branch of knowledge or a domain of practice. I have taught in the discipline of business or enterprise management. I have taught also in the discipline of entrepreneurship or entrepreneurial development. I have also taught in the discipline of research or research methodology. And of course, I have taught in the discipline of project management in my short life as a lecturer, a facilitator, and a teacher. So in my few years of teaching, or even when teaching someone, or when explaining a concept to someone, or even when explaining a phenomenon to someone, I start by first outlining the framework. I start by outlining the framework of the discipline that I'm teaching. I begin by sketching out the framework of the concept or the framework of the phenomenon that I'm explaining or teaching. Well, a phenomenon is basically anything that happens or exists in nature, in science, or in society. When trying to understand a concept, a framework gives you a vantage point onto the subject or onto the discipline that you are trying to wrap around your head. So when I sketch out the framework of the concept or the framework of the phenomenon that I'm explaining, I am basically providing the vantage point onto the concept or onto the phenomenon that I'm explaining. The main reason why I always employ this approach is because without first appreciating the applicable framework to a concept, to a discipline, or to a phenomenon, when getting exposed to it for the first time, it usually becomes cumbersome to understand or to relate to any methods, models, principles, procedures, theories, systems, and theorems that are applicable to that particular discipline, or even to that particular concept, or even to that particular phenomenon. Project management is no exception to this rule. Therefore, an introduction to project management has to adhere to this rule. That is, it has to start with the framework. It has to be first the project management framework. Then the rest of the applicable project management principles, methods, models, theories, theorems, procedures, principles follow or ensue. A framework forces the practitioner of any discipline to be intentional in following or in adhering to its prescribed best practice system or standard, as opposed to treating it as a by the way. Project management framework is a system. It is a system of project management. It is a system of universal project management standard. It is a system of best practice functions and factors that underlie the management of projects. A system is a method. It is a set of interconnected principles and procedures according to which something is done. Therefore, project management framework is a method, or it is a set of best practice functions and factors according to which projects are optimally managed. To be specific, the project management framework is a matrix of 7 horizontal functions and 10 vertical factors. It is a rectangular array. It is an ordered series of 7 horizontal functions and 10 vertical factors. The 7 horizontal functions are referred to as project management functions, whereas the 10 vertical factors are referred to as project management critical success factors. The 7 project management functions are initiation, planning, organization, execution or supervision, monitoring, controlling, and closing. These functions constitute the role of project management in projects. They constitute the purpose and the job of a project manager in projects. Whereas the 10 project management critical success factors are stakeholders or stakeholder engagement, scope, time or schedule, resources, procurement, risks, costs, communication, quality, and integration. Integration is basically an aggregation of the 9 critical success factors. It is the project level aggregation. These factors are the pronounced features of project management. These factors are addressed adequately and are given the attention they deserve in each function. Project management fundamentally happens at the intersection instances of these 7 horizontal functions and 10 vertical factors. That is, comprehensively, project management happens in 7 times 10 instances, which is ideally 70 processes. Every project management function accounts for 10 processes. 10 processes that vertically cut across the 10 instances of project management critical success factors. And each project management critical success factor has 7 processes. These are the 7 processes that horizontally cut across the 10 tasks of project management functions. That is, each project management function embodies 10 processes that address stakeholders or stakeholder engagement, scope, time or schedule, resources, procurement, risks, costs, communication, quality, and integration. Whereas every project management critical success factor is addressed in 7 processes. 7 processes that initiate it through the determination of its requirements, that plan for its execution and for its management, that organize capacity for its execution, that execute it, or rather that supervise its execution, that monitor its performance, that control any detected deviation or variance in its performance, and that close it through the fulfillment of its requirements or through the delivery of its deliverables. Also, as project managers, through each project management function, we exert a specific activity on each of the 10 critical success factors. We exert a specific broad activity, and in some cases a multi-layered activity to all 10 critical success factors. The project initiation function subjects all the 10 critical success factors to the determination of their respective requirements. That is, determining what will be expected and required by the appropriate project stakeholders from the project come the end of the project. Through the project initiation function, as project managers, we determine the project requirements for each critical success factor. We basically find out and inquire from the project stakeholders what are their expectations of the project outcome. What are their expectations in terms of functionality and in terms of features of the project outcome? What do they expect from the project when the project reaches its completion or its conclusion? The project planning function also subjects all the 10 critical success factors to the development of their respective management plans. Through the project planning function, as project managers, we develop the plans for discharging or executing the activities that are necessary for the fulfillment of the project requirements for each critical success factor. The project organization function also subjects all the 10 critical success factors to the setting up of their respective capacity and overall on the setting up of the project structure or the project organization or the project entity. Through the project organization function, as project managers, we set up the capacity, be it the necessary resources and the conducive environment that is necessary for the execution of the planned activities. This includes assembling the project team that is necessary for the execution of the planned activities. This we do for each critical success factor. The project execution function also subjects all the 10 critical success factors to the execution of their respective activities by the project team members, and in some instances, by the project manager themselves. When viewed as the project supervision function, instead of being the project execution function, it also subjects all the 10 critical success factors to the supervision of its activities that are executed by the project team members, and in some instances that are discharged by the project manager themselves. Through the project execution function or through the project supervision function, as project managers, we direct and supervise the project activities execution by the project team members. This we do for each critical success factor. The project monitoring function puts all the 10 critical success factors through the observation of the performance of their respective activities execution in line with their respective management plans. Through the project monitoring function, as project managers, we observe the project activities execution performance by the project team members to ensure that it is in line with the project management plans for each critical success factor. The project controlling function also subjects all the 10 critical success factors to the correction of their respective activities execution performance variance. This is done where the actual activities execution performance deviates from the expected activities execution performance as stipulated in each critical success factor's management plan. Through the project controlling function, as project managers, we arrest or correct any detected project activities execution performance or output that has deviated from what was planned and stipulated in the project management plans for each critical success factor. The project closing function also puts all the 10 critical success factors through the fulfillment of their respective requirements as it was determined through the project initiation function, which is basically the delivery of the deliverables that match the project stakeholders' requirements that were determined by the project manager through the project initiation function, and the ultimate deliverable being the project outcome. Be it a product, a service, an experience, or a result of some sort that satisfy the objectives of the project owner and satisfy the requirements of the project stakeholders. Through the project closing function, as project managers, we deliver the deliverables as per the requirements for each critical success factor. It is at the intersection of individual functions and individual factors where the project management processes lie or are effected. At the intersection of the initiation function and the stakeholder engagement factor lies the determined stakeholder engagement requirements process, which is primarily the identification of the project stakeholders by the project manager, and it is also the first instance of the compilation of the project stakeholder register by the project manager. By the way, project stakeholders refer to entities that have an interest in the project work or an interest in the project outcome. Whether it is a direct interest or not is immaterial. This includes entities that may affect or be affected by the project work or be affected by the project outcome. Whether affecting the project or being affected by the project directly or indirectly or peripherally is immaterial. For example, in a project of building a house, stakeholders could be the client on whose behalf the house is being built. Stakeholders could also include the client's family, the client's neighbors, the architect, the bricklayer, the electrician, the painter, the plasterer, the plumber, the structural engineer, the tiler, the building material suppliers, the local authority inspectorate, and the project manager. Whereas in a project of developing a software application, stakeholders could be the performing organization and its management, the performing organization's customers or the performing organization's service users, the business analyst, the database administrator, the software developer, the systems analyst, the software tester, the computer hardware suppliers, the computer software suppliers, and the project manager. And in a project of vaccinating a community, stakeholders could be the local public healthcare authority, the community itself, the admin clerk, the inoculator, the pharmaceutical supplier, the marquee hire, and the project manager. Note that project managers are also project stakeholders in their own right. At the intersection of the initiation function and the scope factor lies the determine scope requirements process. The determination of the scope requirements entails finding out from the project owner and inquiring from the project stakeholders. Finding out in clear and unambiguous terms the details behind the envisaged project concept or the specifics of the envisioned project objective or the elements of the intended project requirement or the constituents of the required project outcome. Determining the required features and the required functionality among all the attributes of the envisaged project outcome. Always note that scope is what the project is about, which is the sum total of 1, what the project must fulfill or deliver, and 2, what the project must do, where the what the project must fulfill or deliver refers to the project outcome for which the project is undertaken, and where the what the project must do refers to the project work or to the project activities that are necessary to fulfill or to deliver the project outcome. Therefore, scope is the extent of the project, and scope primarily refers to the extent of the project outcome, while scope also entails the extent of the project work that is necessary for the required extent of the project outcome. But for now, let us confine ourselves to the former. In the case of a project whose concept, whose objective, whose requirement or whose outcome is a house, it is not just a house, and it is not just any house. The project manager has to prompt the project owner or the project stakeholders for detailed specifics. Detailed specifics such as building a double-story, 350 square meter, 6-bedroom, thatched roof, cream-colored or cream-painted house. Another example could be a case where the project concept, the project requirement, the project outcome or the project objective is to develop a software application. Again, it is not just any application. It is not just any software application. The project manager has to ask the project owner or the project stakeholders for detailed finer points and specifics. Detailed and clearer specifics such as developing an e-hailing passenger mobile phone app. Also, In a case where the project objective or the project requirement is to vaccinate a community, the project manager could not just run with that brief because the brief is too high level and it is ambiguous. Because basically the project concept could be interpreted as being to vaccinate any community against any disease. Instead, it is the responsibility of the project manager to prompt the project owner for clear-cut specifications. They must solicit detailed requirements that cannot be misinterpreted, such as vaccinating the Vilaco village community against malaria. At the intersection of the initiation function and the time factor or the schedule factor lies the determine time requirements process. This in particular relates to the determination of the project duration as expected by the project owner, or the required project outcome delivery date as required by the project owner or by the project stakeholders. For example, the project owner could specify that they want their house complete, say by the 31st of August, for their occupation on the 1st of September. By the way, project time refers to the amount of time required to execute all the project work in order to deliver the project outcome. Therefore, project time and project duration mean one and the same thing. At the intersection of the project planning function and the scope factor lies the developed scope management plan process, which is the development of the scope statement and the development of the work breakdown structure. At the intersection of the planning function and the time factor or the schedule factor lies the developed time management plan process, which is the development of the project schedule and perhaps also the development of the project network diagram. You'd recall that the determine time requirements process in the initiation function, as discussed in one of the previous slides, is about finding out the expected project duration from the project owner, or is about inquiring from the project owner and the project stakeholders of their required project outcome delivery date, where we said that, for example, the project owner could specify that they want their house complete, say by the 31st of August, for their occupation on the 1st of September. But now with the developed time management plan process, which is a function of the intersection of the planning function and the time factor or the schedule factor, the project manager can either confirm or question the project owner's required project outcome delivery date, because this process is about the calculation of the realistic project duration and contrasting it against the expected project duration by the project owner or against the required project outcome delivery date as required by the project owner or by the project stakeholders. As already established in one of the previous slides, project time refers to the amount of time required to execute all the project work in order to deliver the project outcome. And we also established that project time and project duration mean one and the same thing. The calculation of the project time or of the project duration is the responsibility of the project manager. The project manager realistically allocates durations to each project activity. Not only durations, but also assigns the start date and the finish date to each project activity in a project. The project manager uses industry standards and their own expert judgment in determining and in allocating a duration to each project activity. And then the sum total of the durations of the project activities in a project adds up to the total project duration. The project owner and the project stakeholders may wish or desire for a particular project completion date or a specific project outcome delivery date, but that could only be confirmed as being realistic or unachievable through the compilation of the project schedule by the project manager. Project schedule in projects and in project management refers to a detailed plan or a detailed chart or a detailed timetable that demonstrates or stipulates how the project scope work or the project activities will be carried out, and also when the project scope outcome will be delivered. The project manager plots all the project activities that are necessary in a project. They plot all the activities that need to be executed in order to fulfill the requirements of the project or that are required in order to deliver the project outcome. The project manager plots these activities in a timetable that demonstrates the start and the finish of each project activity. That is the start date and the finish date of each. Not only that, but the timetable also demonstrates the logical sequencing or feasible succession of these activities, demonstrating which activities must start and be completed before other activities can be started. This is done in a project management document or in a project management artifact that is referred to as the project schedule or as the project time management plan. It is, however, not uncommon to hear people referring to the project schedule as the project plan or as the project management plan. But in truth, the project schedule is just one component of the project management plan. Well, a significant component at that. The project management plan is a combination or a collection of the plans of the 9 critical success factors from the project stakeholder engagement management plan to the project quality management plan. At the intersection of the planning function and the resources factor lies the develop resources management plan process, where project resources refer to the required project capital resources, consumable resources or material resources, and human resources, which is the type and the complement of the equipment, consumables, and people required to execute all the project work in order to deliver the project outcome. At the intersection of the planning function and the costs factor lies the develop costs management plan process, which is the development of the project budget. By the way, project costs refer to the specified or estimated project budget or project price, which is the amount of money required to fund or finance all the resources needed to execute all the project work in order to deliver the project outcome. At the intersection of the planning function and the integration factor lies the develop management plan process, which is the integration or the aggregation of the preceding management plans of the other 9 critical success factors. Remember that the integration factor represents the overall project level or the total project level in the hierarchy of critical success factors. That is, the other 9 critical success factors always add up to the integration factor or to the project level factor. Academically, project integration refers to the combination. It refers to the coordination, the definition, the finalization, the representation, the summarization, the summation, the support, and or the unification of the main aspects of the processes of a project management function into a combined, representative, summarized, and or summed up whole. By the aspects of the processes of a project management function, we are referring to the activities, we are referring to the capacity, we are referring to the deliverables or the outputs, and we are referring to the formal documents or the artifacts, all these being some aspects of the processes of a project management function. That is, we are implying that project integration is the combination, is the coordination, is the definition, is the finalization, is the representation, is the summarization, is the summation, is the support and or the unification of the activities, of the capacity, of the deliverables, of the outputs, of the formal documents, of the artifacts of the processes of a project management function. The classical example in the planning function being the combination of the outputs or the combination of the deliverables of the 9 critical success factors, from the project stakeholder engagement to the project quality, into a single output or a single deliverable. As I think you already know on the basis of the preceding slides, that in this example, by a single output or by a single deliverable, we are referring to the project management plan artifact, which is derived from the combination of the management plans of the individual critical success factors from the project stakeholder engagement management plan, through the project scope management plan, through the project time management plan, throughout the critical success factors until the 9th document being the project quality management plan. At the intersection of the organization function and the communication factor lies the setup communication capacity process, which is the setting up of the project communication capacity. By the way, project communication refers to the timer's dissemination or the timer's sharing of appropriate and important project-specific information to relevant project stakeholders through appropriate methods or media and at appropriate frequencies. That is, the timer's dissemination or the timer's sharing of project information is done both at predetermined periodic intervals and on ad hoc basis, which could be necessitated by the urgency of the project information that needs to be shared. The disseminated or shared project information is concerning or is related to the project work and the project outcome. And the project information type and detail differ from one stakeholder to another. The setting up of the project communication capacity entails putting in place the systems to send and to receive emails to and from the project stakeholders. It also entails the setting up of a toll-free information telephone line in cases of community projects. It also entails organizing and conducting information sharing campaigns and roadshows and outreaches, particularly for mass stakeholders and for the far-flung stakeholders. It also entails the setting up of the project stakeholder forum or fora over and above the project steering committee, which would have already been set up by the project sponsor. By the way, project sponsor refers to the project owner. It is usually the organization top management or a specific organizational manager under whose functional unit the project domiciles, or even a client, particularly when the project is undertaken on behalf of the client and at the client site. Well, according to the PMI's PMBOK, project sponsor refers to the person or group of persons who provide resources and support for the project and is accountable for enabling success. At the intersection of the organization function and the resources factor lies the setup resources capacity process, which is the assembly of the project team members and the assembly of all other resources that have already been identified as necessary or essential for the project work execution. These resources could include capital resources such as tools, computers, and equipment, depending on the type of a project that one is managing. And the resources could also include consumables or materials such as bricks, sand, vaccines, printing paper, petrol or diesel. This also depends on the type of the project that one is managing. Human resources in the form of project team members and subject matter experts is also a central aspect in the organization of the project resources in a project. By the way, subject matter expert, abbreviated as SME, refers to a person who is usually a professional who is very knowledgeable and skilled in a specific area of knowledge or practice, or who is very knowledgeable and skilled in a specific discipline, in a specific domain, in a specific field, in a specific industry, in a specific profession, or in a specific sector. A project manager can be a subject matter expert themselves. However, because project managers are usually generalists but not specialists, it usually becomes necessary for a project manager to utilize the knowledge and the skills of SMEs in a project. Subject matter experts are usually regarded as project team members and fall under the project human resources. However, they are usually not full-time on a project. They are utilized as and when in a project. The project manager would usually tap into their expertise during the planning function in a project, and whenever a project manager encounters challenges that are domiciled or related to the project outcomes, industry, or sector. At the intersection of the organization function and the integration factor, the setup project structure process is located and positioned, which is a process about ensuring that all aspects, all the ingredients, all the conditional imperatives or essentials that are necessary for the execution of the project activities are in place, that they are in place before the project activities execution is commenced. The project activities that are catered for at project integration level are not limited to the project scope or to the project outcome activities execution, but encompasses all project activities in all the critical success factors, whether executed by the project team members and those discharged by the project manager themselves. This includes not only setting up capacity to execute stakeholder engagement activities, but it also includes setting up capacity to execute the tasks and the activities for all other critical success factors. That is, it includes creating and setting up a conducive environment for every critical success factor execution to thrive. Of course, it also includes setting up capacity to execute activities that concern the project governance, the phase gates processes, the project's steering committee meetings, and the project administrative responsibilities. In most of the project management frameworks out there, the project organization function is not mentioned, or it is perhaps silent. At Real Institute, we are deliberate and intentional about this function. As a result, it is unambiguous and explicit in our version of the project management framework. The negligence of the organization function is tantamount to shooting oneself in the proverbial foot. At the intersection of the execution function and the scope factor, which is the intersection of the supervision function and the scope factor, lies the supervised scope work execution process, or supervised scope activities execution process. With this process, the project manager specifically directs and supervises the core project activities execution by the project team. This is supervising the execution of the activities that are geared towards the fulfillment of the project outcome requirements. At the intersection of the execution function and the procurement factor lies the supervised procurement activities execution process. Depending on the size and the complexity of a project, the project procurement activities can be executed by the project manager themselves, and some aspects of this process can be done during the project organization function. This is done where the resources that need to be procured from the external suppliers or from the external service providers need to be in place or on project site prior to the commencement of the project work execution or project work supervision function. The project procurement activities could be executed by an administrator or the project administrator and supervised by the project manager in huge and complex projects where project administration is a dedicated project resource. By the way, project procurement refers to the determined project needs for external sourcing of project resources, which is an alternative to utilizing the performing organization's resources, whether wholesale utilization of external resources or supplementary utilization of external resources, which could have an element or a characteristic of outsourcing if human resources are also sourced from external suppliers. At the intersection of the monitoring function and the cost factor lies the observe cost performance process, which is being vigilant on the project expenditure, ensuring that at all times it is in line with what was budgeted and approved in the developed cost management plan during the project planning function. At the intersection of the monitoring function and the quality factor, the observe quality performance process is positioned. It is a process which, in the case of the scope critical success factor, is about observing or measuring the compatibility of the emerging features and the emerging functionality in the embryonic project outcome against the required features and against the required functionality that would have been determined during the project initiation function and that would have been planned during the project planning function. By the way, project quality refers to the conformance of the project performance and the conformance of the project deliverables to the project requirements, and at least conformance as per the specified metric thresholds. However, the observation of the project performance with regards to adherence to the stated or planned quality prescripts and agreed quality matrix is not limited to the scope aspect only, but applicable to all critical success factors. The project manager ought to be vigilant in their observation of the project performance and quality assurance in all critical success factors. Stakeholder engagement activities execution and its performance and its quality assurance is as important in the overall project success. So is the performance and the quality assurance of time, resources, procurement, risks, cost, and communication. At the intersection of the controlling function and the time factor lies the arrest time variance process or correct time variance process, which in instances where the project timeline has deviated from the planned schedule, or in instances where a project delay during the project execution has been encountered. This process will then be about bringing the time performance deviation back to the project schedule and ensuring that at all times it is in line with what was developed and approved in the developed time management plan. In other words, ensuring that at all times it is in line with the project schedule that was developed and approved during the project planning function. As you can tell, this process is a conditional process. It is a process that is discharged only if there's been a project delay encountered. Otherwise, in the absence of project delays during the project execution, this process is not discharged. This conditional characteristic is applicable to the controlling function in its totality. That is, any of its 10 processes are only invoked when something goes wrong or where an anomaly is encountered in the performance of their respective critical success factors. At the intersection of the controlling function and the risks factor lies the arrest risk variance process or correct risk variance process, which is mitigating or responding to any project risk that may have occurred. This we do in line with the project risk response strategy that was allocated to the risk that has been triggered. Where the allocation of the project risk response strategy was done during the development of the risk management plan process in the project planning function, where all the potential project risks were identified or determined during the determined risk requirements process in the project initiation function. By the way, project risks refers to the determined, the identified, or the projected events or phenomena that have a likelihood of transpiring or happening while the project is underway and whose impact have a potential to be detrimental to the project or to some aspect of the project should they occur, and the importance of their identification, analysis, planning, managing, and subverting is key to project success and also to project manager competence. At the intersection of the closing function and the scope factor, the fulfill scope requirements process or the deliver scope deliverables process is positioned. This process is about the completion of the project outcome by the project team. It is also about the validation of the project outcome by the project owner or by the project stakeholders. And it is about the handover of the project outcome by the project manager. The project team satisfies itself through quality testing that it has fulfilled all the project scope outcome requirements. The project manager, on the other hand, ensures a smooth handover of the project outcome to the principals and to the stakeholders, and facilitates a sign-off documentation with all concerned and with those who are authorized to do so. The project stakeholders scrutinize the project outcome and validate it as having met the requirements, or invalidate the project outcome as having fallen short of the origination project concept, or invalidates it as having fallen short of the briefed project objective, or as having fallen short of the specified project requirements in terms of functionality, features, and any other specifications. In case of invalidation of the project outcome, several scenarios could play out, including litigation. However, in a proper project environment, where proper project management has been effected, it is highly unlikely that at the end of the project, that the project outcome fails scrutiny and does not meet the requirements. Of course, this does happen in many projects that we read and hear about in the public media. If this happens, it primarily points to poor or absent project governance. Equally so, it points to poor or absent project management. When project governance is in place and functional, and when the project manager is competent and ethical, it is improbable for a project to run its full course without the detection of defects early enough, be it defects in the project work or defects in the embryonic project outcome, let alone defects in the completed project outcome. At the intersection of the closing function and the quality factor lies the fulfill quality requirements process or deliver quality deliverables process. This is the final quality check for all the critical success factors, including the scope critical success factor, where the required project outcome features and functionality are validated against the scope requirements that were determined during the project initiation function. However, as you can logically project by now, the meeting of the quality prescripts in the fulfillment of the project requirements and in the delivery of the project deliverables is applicable to all critical success factors, be it stakeholder engagement, time, resources, procurement, risks, costs, or communication. At the intersection of the closing function and the integration factor lies the fulfill project requirements process or deliver project deliverables process. Project closeout is not limited to the fulfillment of the project requirements or the validation of the project outcome by the project owner and the project stakeholders, and the handover of the project outcome by the project manager. Project closeout is also, and equally importantly, about closing or decommissioning a project properly. A project closeout report to the project steering committee, including the final or closeout project steering committee meeting, has to be done. The documentation and the archiving of the lessons learned has to be properly done. The decommissioning of the project structure and the formal release of the project resources have to be properly attended to by the project manager. This pattern of the processes that are instances of the intersection of individual project management functions and individual project management critical success factors is uniform in intent and effort, and is perpetuated and sustained from the first intersection instance until the 70th intersection instance. Also note that, as discussed when dealing with the closing function instance of intersecting with the scope factor, note that the project outcome handover is applicable where the project outcome is a product. For example, in a case where the project concept or the project objective or the project requirement is to build a house, then the process of delivering the project outcome entails the handing over of the house to the project owner for the final validation. Not just the handed over, but also equally important, the acceptance or the rejection of the project outcome. That is, the acceptance or the rejection that the house meet or does not meet the functionality and the features that were agreed upon during the determined scope requirements process in the project initiation function. Whereas in a case where the project outcome is a service or is an experience, the deliver project scope outcome process entails the validation of the service delivered, or the service rendered, or the experience encountered or undergone by the project stakeholders. For example, in the case where the project objective is to vaccinate a community, then the outcome delivery process entails the project stakeholders being satisfied. It entails the community and the local health authority management being content that the community has been adequately vaccinated, even though the true success of such a project can only be realistically realized a few months or even few years down the line, through observing the continued prevalence of the bug in the community, or through experiencing or noticing the abating of the bug or the abating of the disease in the community against which the community was being vaccinated for. In a nutshell, that's how we arrive at the 70 project management processes. However, in reality, the intensity of the project management framework is more on the early side or on the left side of the matrix. As the project management effort gravitates towards the right-hand side of the matrix, the number of project management processes diminishes because the intensity becomes integrated in the latter functions of the project management framework. For example, the determination of the project requirements in the project management initiation function and the development of the project management plans in the project management planning function for the scope, time, and costs critical success factors has dedicated processes for each. The project scope has its dedicated process of developing its specific management plan, being the scope statement and the WBS. Whereas the project time has also an exclusive process of developing its distinct management plan, being the project schedule and the network diagram. And also the project costs has a dedicated process of developing its specific management plan, being the project budget. However, as you gravitate towards organization, execution, monitoring, controlling and closing functions, these three critical success factors are addressed in an integrated manner. When monitoring the project performance using the end value method, or EVM, or the end value analysis, or EVA, scope, time, and cost are observed, or rather their performance is observed or analyzed in an integrated manner. It is done in a single and unitary project management process instead of three. That is, the three monitoring processes of the scope, time, and cost critical success factors are collapsed into a single process called EVM or EVA. Also, within the project management controlling function, when performance variance correction necessitates changes in the project management plan blueprint, the necessary amendments to the project management plan blueprint are done through an integrated change control process. I must have covered quite a lot at this early moment, particularly to those who are new to project management. Well, the rest of the video will provide a systematic build-up that would be easily comprehensible, particularly to those who are new to project management. Also, be on the lookout for videos that address most of the 70 processes that we've alluded to. These videos, they range from the determination of stakeholder engagement requirements, the determination of scope requirements, time requirements, and resources requirements, the development of the stakeholder engagement plans, the development of the scope statement, project schedule, project network diagram, including the critical path, the development of the project WBS, project budget, project communication plan, the setting up of the project capacity and the project structure or organization, the project risk management regime, the compilation of the project status reports, the constitution of the project phase gates forums, the correction of scope, time, and cost variances, the process of integrated change control, the delivery of the project outcome process, the appraisal of the project team, the documentation and archiving of the lessons learned, and many others that make up the fundamental 70 processes of project management, including quality and procurement. The videos of all the aforementioned project management processes are published from time to time on this Real Institute channel. Now, on a brief but comprehensive discussion on the project management functions, perhaps the question begs, as project managers, what do we do when we perform our core responsibilities? Our core responsibilities that are referred to as the 7 project management functions. Well, the project management profession, and the PMI in particular, categorically asserts 5 project management stages or 5 project management process groups, being initiating, planning, executing, monitoring and controlling, and closing. It also asserts the 10 knowledge areas. The knowledge areas that at Real Institute we refer to as the project management critical success factors. With the PMI framework or model, not all the intersecting instances of the project management process groups and knowledge areas have logical processes. Hence the gaps in some of the intersecting instances. In total, the PMI framework or the PMI model advocates for 49 processes that are scattered in an irregular allocation among the project management process groups and their respective knowledge areas. The initiating process group and the closing process group have the least number of processes, with the initiating process group accounting for only 2 processes that are confined to the integration and the stakeholder knowledge areas, and the closing process group accounts for only 1 process in the integration knowledge area. On the other hand, the planning process group has a staggering 24 processes, with the executing and the monitoring and controlling process groups accounting for 10 and 12 processes respectively. This irregular pattern in the allocation of processes to the intersecting instances of the project management process groups and knowledge areas is just okay, and it is proven to be adequate, as the project manager's fundamental tasks and the fundamental project management principles are comprehensively addressed and covered. However, this irregular pattern in the allocation of processes could prove to be convoluted to an uninitiated mind. Hence, at the Real Institute, we crafted a much simpler framework with regular allocation of processes at every intersecting instance of the project management functions and the project management critical success factors. Well, whether in reality there is adequate content for all the 70 instances is neither here nor there, because the objective is to simplify the project management framework. Our framework does not only have a regular allocation of processes across the model, but also Each intersecting instance is simplified by being allocated a single process instead of several, as it is the case in some of the PMBOK intersecting instances. It must, however, still be emphasized that materially and effectively, the net effect of both models are equal. As a matter of fact, our model is derived from the PMI's project management body of knowledge, or from the PMI's PMBOK. Therefore, there is absolutely no contention between the PMBOK and our model. The difference is merely the presentation style, as we prefer to have every aspect of the project management functions stand out and being explicit, whereas the PMBOK's presentation in some instances can be implicit. As a result, at Real Institute, we contend and postulate 7 project management functions, where project organization makes an entrance as a fully fledged standalone project management function, and where project execution is treated more as project execution supervision, or simply as project work execution supervision, and also where project monitoring and controlling process group is split into the project monitoring function of observing project work execution performance and into the project controlling function of arresting or correcting the project work execution performance anomaly, deviation, or variance. That is, the monitoring and controlling process group becomes 2 separate functions. We have also logically rearranged the project management critical success factors. For example, we have positioned the cost critical success factor such that in the order of application, it comes after all other critical success factors that have cost implications, so that all the cost aspects of a project are dealt with before consolidating them into the overall cost factor. Also, the quality factor is positioned after all the project management critical success factors, save for the integration, because the quality critical success factor is a function of all the other project management critical success factors. That is, the quality factor is not the preserve of only the scope critical success factor and the project outcome, but that every project management critical success factor should be subjected to a deliberate quality planning and scrutiny. Also, the integration critical success factor is positioned last in the order of critical success factors because of its aggregation and integration role and characteristic. This is done with a full consciousness that the project definition and the project authorization, and by implication the project charter, are integration aspects, and in practice they are addressed before the determination of the requirements for all the critical success factors during the initiation function. Project management critical success factors have got a dedicated video on this Real Institute channel where they are dealt with in some more detail, as this video is largely about the project management functions. The relationship between the 7 project management functions is modeled such that the logical flow of the project management effort can be visualized with absolute clarity and thus enhance its comprehensibility. The initiation function is fundamentally about starting a project. However, it could also be about starting a project phase. While project phase is outside the scope of this brief presentation, it is, however, addressed in some of the subsequent videos on this channel. This function, that is the initiation function, is therefore primarily about defining a project and authorizing the start of a project. However, technically this function is about the identification of the project stakeholders and the determination of the project requirements from the project stakeholders, where the project requirements specify the project outcome that will be required at the end of the project. The specified project outcome that would be a product, a service, an experience, or a result. The initiation function leads directly to the planning function. The planning function is about developing the project management plans on the basis of the project requirements that were gathered in the initiation function or through the initiation function. Project management plans become the official blueprint of managing a project only when they have been authorized by the project governance structure or by the project steering committee. The project steering committee, together with the project sponsor role, are addressed, covered, and discussed in subsequent videos on this channel. Once the planning function has been finalized, all plans have been scrutinized and signed off by the project authorities or project principals. Then the planning function logically leads to the organization function. The organization function is about setting up the project capacity and the project structure that is necessary for the execution of the project work as detailed in the project management plans, which also includes the assembly of the necessary project resources and the assembly of the project team. Then when the project manager has satisfied themselves that all has been organized, arranged, and set up well for the conducive execution of the project work or of the project activities by the project team, then the project execution function or the project work execution supervision function kicks in. This function, that is the project work execution supervision function, is about directing and supervising the project work execution by the project team on the basis of the project management plans. While the project work execution and its supervision is underway, the monitoring of the project work performance should not be overlooked. As a result, the project monitoring function lingers in the background, however not a distinct background. This function, that is the project monitoring function, is embedded on the project supervision function, and it is about observing the project work execution performance. This entails continuous and diligent measurement of the actual project work execution performance and comparing it against the expected project work execution performance as detailed in the project management plans. This function is also about the periodic reporting of the project progress and the project status to the project stakeholders and specifically to the project steering committee. As the legend of Murphy will have its way, if something can go wrong, it sometimes will. Therefore, the possibility of the project work execution performance deviating from what was planned is a possibility in projects, and this is addressed through the controlling function. This is a conditional function. That is, the controlling function is a conditional function. It's a conditional function that gets triggered only if the project work execution performance variance or deviation from the project management plans is detected through the project monitoring function. It is therefore a function that deals with the arresting or with the correcting of the project work execution performance variance or the project work execution performance anomaly. Depending on the severity of the detected performance anomaly and the logical resolution of the anomaly, it may be necessary, although undesirable, to revisit one of the preceding project management functions. The damage or the defect could be such that the determination of the requirements is revisited or revised, which is a worst-case scenario. And in most cases, this points to the incompetence of the project manager and the neglect in the determination of the requirements upstream in the project management value chain effort. Worse still, the defect could be such that the project management plans be reviewed and amended, of course with the consent of the project steering committee or the project owner. Again, when things deteriorate to this level, the project manager's competence could be called into question. Although in some cases, there could be a valid justification to warrant a restart of the planning function midway through the project. Yet another defect could be due to a miss during the project organization, which would necessitate revisiting the organization function. Whereas an arrest or correction of the performance variance or deviation could be taken care of without having to revisit the initiation, the planning, and the organization function, but by merely refocusing interventions on the execution function. Project management techniques such as the resource leveling, project crashing, or project fast tracking may be invoked or invocable in order to arrest or correct an anomaly that has not run out of control. These techniques are addressed, covered, and discussed in subsequent videos on this channel. Then finally, the closing function takes the center stage. This function is the inverse of the project initiation function. It is about the fulfillment of the project requirements that were determined through the project initiation function, implying that it is about the delivery of the project deliverables that match the project requirements. Bottom line, the project closing function is about the completion and the delivery of the project outcome. The delivery of the project outcome that can be a product, a service, an experience, or a result. It is effectively about the acceptance of the project outcome by the project stakeholders. It is about the project stakeholders validating and accepting the project outcome as being reflective of the stated project requirements. Lastly, the project closing function is also about the wrapping up of the project, where the wrapping up of the project includes several tasks or activities, such as the appraisal of the project and the documentation of the lessons learned. It also includes the appraisal of the project team and the appraisal of the project team members. And finally, the project closing function is about the decommissioning of the project structure and the release of the project resources. Fundamentally, this is what we do as project managers. This is how we work. This is how we approach the management of projects. These are the skills that we possess. Steady but surely, let us take it a notch higher and look at these functions individually, and again look at them briefly yet comprehensively by stating them in a narrative form. The first thing that we do as project managers when we manage projects, we determine requirements. We do this by first identifying the project stakeholders. Then we inquire of the project stakeholders their expectations and their needs from the project. We document these expectations and needs as project requirements, or we simply list them as project requirements. The second thing that we do when we manage projects, we develop plans. On the basis of the requirements, on the basis of the expectations and the needs of the project stakeholders, we capture and document the extent of these requirements in a form of an outcome that is expected by the project stakeholders. This outcome could be a product that is expected and required by the stakeholders. But this outcome could also be a service or an experience that is expected and required by the stakeholders from the project. Together with the detailed expected project outcome, we capture and document any envisaged constraints or limitations that are anticipated due to the nature of the outcome and also due to the prevailing circumstances in the environment where the project will be undertaken. We also document any logical assumptions and situational assumptions that could either impede or aid the ease of performing the project work. And all these are captured in a document called the scope statement. From the scope statement, we then demarcate the expected project outcome into its main distinguishable aspects or components. By the main distinguishable aspects or components, we mean the phases or the milestones that are applicable in the development of that particular project outcome. Project outcomes, any one and any type of them, are the function of some industry or some sector. And all industries and sectors have standard frameworks for the development of their outputs. These standard frameworks are commonly referred to as the product development cycle. And a product development cycle is demarcated into phases or milestones. Product development cycle is simply a process constituted of a succession of activities that are grouped into a series of distinguishable phases, where each phase contributes or adds its incremental value or milestone to the embryonic product until the intended product is completed. The term embryonic in this context refers to something that has started to form or that has started to be yet not complete. It refers to something that is rudimentary, something that is underdeveloped, something that is not fully developed yet. It is work in progress or it is work in process. The phrase product development cycle in this context is used generically and is applicable to any outcome that follows a development process or a developmental process, be it a product, a service, an experience, or any other result. Product development cycle is applicable to all spheres of life, be it business, be it formal, informal, institutional, organizational, personal, societal, etc. For example, the build industry has its standard product development cycle for, say, building a house. And the phases or milestones of the product development cycle of building a house are 1. House foundation or substructure, 2. House walls or superstructure, 3. House roof, 4. House external works, and 5. House finishes. The house foundation is a phase and it becomes a milestone in the endeavor of building a house. The product development cycle is not limited to the production or to the development of tangible products. Even the delivery of intangible services or the delivery of abstract experiences, some form of product development cycle becomes applicable. Whether you can call it a service development cycle or an experience development cycle is immaterial. Bottom line is that just like tangible products, its outcomes can also be defined in terms of their main distinguishable aspects or components, that is, in terms of their phases or milestones. So in our example of a project of building a house, the main components of such an undertaking, that is the phases and the milestones of such an undertaking as indicated, are the house foundation or substructure, the house walls or superstructure, the house roof, house external works, and house finishes. Whereas in the case of a project of developing a software application, these main components or phases or milestones are software design, software coding, software documenting, software testing, and software deployment. And in the case of a project of vaccinating a community, the main components, the phases, the milestones of such an undertaking are campaign planning, vaccines procurement, campaign organization, community outreach and roadshows, administering or vaccinating, and campaign closing or campaign wrap-up. Then for each of these main distinguishable aspects or components, for each of these phases or milestones, we determine the work that the project team has to do or has to execute. For example, in the case of the house foundation, the main work packets are 1. Mark out the level datum point. 2. Calculate material or ground to be removed. 3. Mark out house foundation. 4. Mark out the trenches for house foundation. 5. Mark all the corners. 6. Dig the house foundation trenches. 7. Insert depth pegs. And 8. Mix and pour the concrete. We do this breakdown of the work that is necessary for each phase or each milestone of the expected or of the required product outcome. And all these are captured in a document or in an artifact called WBS, or work breakdown structure. From the work breakdown structure, we then draw a timetable of these work packets or a schedule of these project activities. For example, in the task of building a house foundation, the project activities are not done simultaneously and they are not executed haphazardly. The project team cannot mix and pour the concrete before, say, digging the foundation trenches. That is, as project managers, we sequence the project activities in a logical manner, or we sequence them in a manner that is best practice in the sector of the project outcome. We don't only sequence these project activities logically, but we also determine the duration or the amount of time it will take to start and finish each one of them. We also go a step further by determining the resources that will be required to execute each of these activities. We determine the type and the complement of resources that are necessary for each one of them. Complement simply means the total number of resources that will be required for a specific project activity. For example, in the project activity of digging the foundation trenches, depending on the size of the house that the project has to build, we could require, say, 2 diggers and 2 picks or 2 spade shovels. This is where the project activity is going to be performed strictly by people, that is by human resources, using manual tools, which are the capital resources. However, in a case where the digging activity is to be performed by a machine or by utilizing a TLB, one TLB, which is a capital resource, and one machine operator or one TLB driver, which is a human resource, will be required. TLB is a in the building sector refers to an equipment called tractor loader backhoe. It is an equipment that could be used for digging trenches. We then plot all these details on a chart and we tabulate these details in a timetable. And this chart or timetable of project activities, including their durations, showing their start and finish times, showing their required resources by time and by complement, is called the project schedule. The project schedule, together with the project scope statement and the project work breakdown structure or WBS, constitute what we refer to as the project plan, or more precisely as the project management plan. Well, as we have already established, a project management plan is not limited to these 3 components. There are other components of the project management plan that are significant, such as the project cost plan or the project budget, and other components such as the stakeholder engagement management plan, the resources management plan, the procurement management plan, the risks management plan, the communication management plan, and the quality management plan. For the purpose of this brief presentation, we will just leave it at the scope statement, the WPS, and the schedule. The third thing that we do as project managers when we manage projects, we set up capacity and we set up structure. We do this as a preparation for the project work execution, so that when the project team is assembled, everything is in place. The preparation is so that the project structure is in place when the work begins. We ensure that the capital resources and any other necessary project consumables or resource materials are in place or are on site. All this organization that we do before the project work execution commences, we do not do it haphazardly, but we do it according to the project management plan that was developed during the project planning function. The fourth thing that we do as project managers when we manage projects, we direct and supervise work execution. After we have set up the project structure and the project capacity, and we have assembled the project team, then the project work execution commences. We then direct and supervise the project work execution. Once more, we do the directing and the supervision of the project work execution by the project team only on the basis of the project management plan. The fifth thing that we do when we manage projects, we observe work execution performance. Even though we direct and supervise the project work execution by the project team on the basis of the project management plan, we don't lose sight of the level of performance by the project team. We therefore periodically measure the actual project work execution performance and compare it against the expected project work execution performance as detailed in the project management plan. We do this at short intervals. Depending on the nature, the type, and the size of the project, we evaluate or analyze the project work execution performance daily or every other day or weekly or monthly. However, we ensure that the project work execution performance evaluation is done at shortest intervals possible, or at shortest interval feasible, or at logically shortest interval. We do this in order to ensure that in cases where the actual project work execution performance deviates from the expected project work execution performance, we arrest or correct the anomaly early enough and before the variance and the deviation becomes too huge or too big to be arrested or to be corrected. We also report periodically the progress and the status of the project work execution performance to the project stakeholders and specifically to the project governance structure or the project steering committee. The sixth thing that we do as project managers when we manage projects, we correct work execution performance variance or deviation. In cases where we detect a deviation of the actual project work execution performance, a deviation from the expected project work execution performance, we arrest or correct the anomaly and bring back the actual project work execution performance to be in line with the expected project work execution performance as detailed in the project management plans. For each project work execution performance anomaly or deviation, we use an appropriate project control technique in order to arrest or correct the deviation. There are several techniques at our disposal as project managers, such as resources leveling, such as project crashing, and such as project fast tracking. In cases where the deviation has become too huge, and perhaps uncontrollable through the project management techniques, we invoke the integrated change control process, a process that necessitates a review and perhaps that necessitates an amendment to the project management plan. The integrated change control process allows us as project managers to revise the project management plan and then present it with justification to the project stakeholders or to the project steering committee for consideration and for approval, and perhaps also for rejection. Good project management practice dictates that as project managers, we cannot change the project course. We cannot revise and change the project management plans willy-nilly or randomly. It is the competence of the project governance structure or forum to authorize the review of the project course and to authorize the amendment of the project management plans. Also, the project management plans are not amended just at the drop of the hat. Instead, they are amended with unquestionable justification and impeccable motivation. The seventh and the last thing that we do as project managers when we manage projects, we fulfill requirements and we deliver deliverables. Because projects actualize concepts, Because as project managers, our responsibility is to facilitate the transformation of the project concepts into their realized project outcomes. The crowning of our responsibility is the fulfillment of the project requirements that were conceived by the project owners and by the project stakeholders prior to the commencement of the project. And the ultimate worth of our stewardship is the delivery of the project deliverables as expected by the project stakeholders come the end of the project. At closeout, we walk away from projects having handed over satisfactory products, worthwhile services, and unforgettable experiences to our principals and for our stakeholders. That's the 7 project management functions in brief, which in my view constitute the best approach to the introduction to project management. These functions are discussed in more detail in some of the videos that are published by the Real Institute. Be on the lookout for some of the videos that address these functions in more detail from the Real Institute channel, including a successor to this video on the project management critical success factors.